To another episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is a show dedicated to helping owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses have what I refer to as the premier accounting firm in their area, offering quality accounting services and getting paid what they're worth. It's here in the show that we actually cover a variety of topics, speaking with the experts and finding out what it is they share that we should be doing in order to actually have a thriving business that we can be confident and competent with. Now, as for this, each and every week we have on an expert, and we have another one today that I'm excited to share with you. It is Christina Lenkowski. Now, Christina happens to be someone that is very forward thinking in the podcast world. She is a publicist and educator for entrepreneurs, speakers, and authors looking to expand their credibility and go from best kept secrets to go-to experts in their industries through being a guest on other people's podcasts. Since 2019, after 13 years working in a PR realm or in the PR realm, Christina discovered that what was being helpful is becoming a guest on podcasts, which she did for her online business. Now, since then, she's dedicated her work to helping other business owners, actually, particularly women, see that same kind of result. She's been a guest on over 65 podcasts, including her Empire Builder, Brand Gravity, and the Heather Sager Show. And she's helped actually her private clients get booked on over 900 top rated shows, including Hello 7 and Superwoman Wellness, in fact. So welcome to the show, Christina.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger. I'm so excited to be here today talking to your audience about probably an area of marketing they haven't thought too much about, or just kind of assume it's kind of something that people just get asked to do, or that they might not ever have the opportunity to really do. And I'm here to change some minds on that. So I'm really, really excited.
Well, I appreciate that, because that right there is, I think, the reason why this is so exciting. Because if you had gone back maybe, let's say 5, 10 years ago, I don't know that podcasting would have come up in the top 5 mind
Mhm.
ideas of what I need to be doing as it relates to marketing my business. But clearly it is one of those top rated things that today we ought to be considering. Why do you think that's the case? Why is podcasting now becoming such a prominent way of marketing one's services or business?
I love this question. And I think that really what it comes down to is people want to be consuming their media when they're on the go. So we are at like a very interesting time in our world and in humanity, where it's like we want to be doing multiple things at once, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not necessarily going to sit and watch something, right? I'm not necessarily going to do these things. I've got a kid, I've got a business, I've got all these other things going on. So I am really trying to make the most of that. And so for me, podcasts really fit into my life seamlessly, meaning I'm listening to a podcast when I go to pick up my kid, and depending on the podcast after I pick up my kid, making sure that it's not something like true crime or something that, my 10-year-old probably wouldn't appreciate very much. But really incorporating it when I go on a walk every morning, when I'm doing these other things in my life, I'm able to incorporate podcasts. And so I think that's a big thing that's happened. And I think the pandemic only heightened that for a lot
Yes.
of people. Podcasts, as you can imagine, exploded in 2020 because people were still craving that human connection, but we couldn't really leave our house. And that's actually why, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, why I think podcasts are particularly effective for those in the finance sector is people want to have what they consider a personal connection, even though they are just listening in on a conversation and not necessarily a part of it directly.
You've touched on a number of things there that I think are hugely important. I'm going to back up because there's a few that I'd like
Yeah.
to dive into. One of which is, when you consider marketing, marketing is typically this small, short type of connection that you have with a potential customer for them to actually recognize that there may be value in your services or product, and then require them to actually self-identify, raise their hand and say, hey, by the way, this might actually interest me. Well, when you look at it from a marketing point of view, it's that 30-second radio commercial. It's that direct mail piece. It's a small little sheet of paper that you've tried to condense some form of information on there that's compelling. It's some ad that you've got on Instagram that's 30 seconds long. The point is it's all so short and condensed
Mhm.
and concise. But podcasting affords you the ability to have the attention of someone for as many as 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, where
Mhm.
you actually get to become a lot more intimate. They can become familiar with you. And when we know that sales are built upon that know, like, and trust feature,
Exactly.
all
Yep.
of a sudden you become relatable. What more
Yep.
would you add to that?
I would say you've exactly hit the nail on the head. The sales cycle, the studies have shown the sales cycle too is shortened so much because people, just like you said, they hear someone on a podcast, they hear them talk for 30 minutes. By the way, with a host that they typically very much trust,
Hmm.
someone that they are very, very much interested in getting information from. In fact, studies show that 70% of podcast listeners feel like they have a personal connection to the host that they listen to. So by extension, that means that the people that they bring on as guests are also going to have that higher level of trust than someone just popping up right on their timeline or something like that. But to your point, it just heightens that know, like, and trust factor so dramatically. And I think why it works so well in finance, in these bookkeeping, tax, accounting
Hmm.
arenas is because we don't want to just talk to a random person about our money,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
I'm not necessarily just like, oh, you work in tax and accounting. Let me just spill all my questions, all my secrets, all my revenue stuff, all my questions right out at the gate, right? But when you do feel like you heard someone talk about this stuff and you really liked what they had to say, like you resonated with what they had to say, they said something that really made sense to you. You like that is where our clients see this huge exponential growth in people booking discovery calls, in people seeing if this is the right person for them to work with because they're basically already bought in. You know what I mean? They're like, this person gets it. This person understands where I am coming from, and I feel like I'm ready to open up to them a bit.
Yeah, what you're defining there in my mind is actually accelerating this transition from the marketing into the sales realm. And in
Exactly.
that sales realm, you're closing that gap. You're accelerating the process in which that person becomes comfortable with you, familiar with you, and
Yep.
interested in your services because the education has happened. They've actually gotten to know what you're doing and, more importantly, like you as an individual. And you're
Yes.
right, when it comes to the financial information, so much of what we're being told is very trust oriented. They're not
Mhm.
telling anyone else. And so
No.
for you to build that relationship via the podcast, that they're able to first meet with you and go, no, I really actually already feel comfortable with you because of things
Yes.
that I've already heard you say is powerful because you're accelerating
Hugely
that.
powerful,
Yeah.
hugely powerful. And I think, again, I said like it does really well in finance. It lends itself really well. We have found with like lawyers, therapists, etc., where really, like you said, that trust needs to be there for someone to open up to you. And podcasts are just like such a phenomenal way to kind of naturally have that happen. In really not a whole lot of work on your end.
Yeah. Now, there's two things that I've always said that need to take place in the sales cycle to actually help accelerate or, more importantly, close certain deals. One is to educate the potential customer as to what it is you're doing and how they can benefit. And the other is to position you as an authority. I'd like to actually ask in podcasting, how do we accomplish or how do you see that being accomplished? One, the educational side, and two, the authority side.
So the education side happens naturally in the sense that when you are going on a show, you are there to provide value for the audience. Okay. And so people get really hung up on this with me. They'll be like, well, I don't want to go on a show and just talk about myself. And I'm like, you shouldn't be going on a show and talking about yourself. Like, that's absolutely not what no one wants to hear you talk about you and the great things you've accomplished. Like maybe your mom does, but the rest of us don't. You know what I mean? And so when you go on to these interviews and when you're pitching yourself for shows, you are going from an education standpoint. You are going, I like to say service over self promotion,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not here talking about, with Roger about how great I am or how wonderful I am. I'm talking about these are why podcasts work for financial, people in the finance fields, right? That is what I'm here to educate on. I'm not here to educate on Christina, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really important kind of nuance there is that's naturally what you are going to be doing when you go on a podcast. And then when it comes to building authority, there is so much power in proximity. Okay. And so what I mean by that is just like we talked about before, the people that are listening to the show, they trust you, Roger. They trust what you have to say. You have built that over time with them to where they're like, well, if Roger's talking about it, then I'm listening. You know what I mean? And so you are able to, by definition, borrow, you know what I mean? Some of
Mhm.
that authority from Roger when you go on that show. And we have had clients get on shows of all different kinds, but even particularly some of the biggest shows that are out there in the podcast arena. And that will serve our clients for years to come because they have that proximity to that person. And that's going to give them list building years down the road, potential leads years down the road, and not just necessarily in the week that a show airs or something like that. And so I think that's a really important point to think about as well.
Yeah, now you're actually touching on a number of things that I'd like to actually dive into. One of which I want to go back to this idea of being relatable. Yes, the show isn't to grandize yourself and actually celebrate who you
Yeah.
are, but it is a byproduct because in the natural course of the conversation, as you're discussing things that you're knowledgeable about and what the client
Mhm.
perhaps wants to know, they're going to actually indirectly learn about you, your mannerisms, your style of communication. They're going to
Absolutely.
find out about you as a person, and therefore you become a little bit more relatable. And so that's one of the things that's a byproduct. But you're right, nine
Totally.
times out of 10, we're not going on the show to talk about us. We're
Yeah.
going on the show to talk about things for which we're an expert. So that's very important. Now, as for being an expert, one of the things that some people I've heard say is, I don't want to go on the show and reveal all of my secrets, tell all of my expertise, because I've got to leave something for them to come back and pay for. So what I've oftentimes said is that you want to address the what's and the why, but leave the how to the paying customer. What would
Absolutely.
you add to that?
I think that's a really great point. I love how you put that in that way, is like really giving people the reason as to why that should be a thing, but not necessarily going as much into the how. And that's a perfect example of what we're doing today, right? I am talking with you guys about why guesting on podcasts is so important, why this should be a part of your marketing strategy. But we're not going to go super deep into like how you should be doing that work, right? We can talk about it a bit. I'm totally happy to talk about that a bit. But when it comes down to it, you aren't going to know the exact nuances of everything our team does in order to get bookings for our clients, right? And so I think what you said is exactly that. And I've kind of heard people talk about it in this way. I like to give people the branches, but they don't necessarily have the trunk. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm,
I'm
yep.
going to give them even pieces of how I do it, but the fact of the matter is they're not going to know everything. Like they'd have to be picking that up from multiple different sources, getting that from all these different things, kind of putting that together. And so I absolutely don't think you should be giving away your trade secrets or giving away things that make you super special in the how that you do it, but you can absolutely be talking about the why and be talking about the difference that you do from maybe someone else that does the exact same thing as well.
I love this. This is awesome. Now, I'm going to actually give a little asterisk here and do a little side. There's an exception.
Please do. I'm
I do,
excited.
I,
Okay.
I do find that there is value to reveal some of the secrets
Mhm.
for two reasons. One, when you tip your hand and you actually show here are how you can go about doing things. It's kind of the secret sauce. The person realizes clearly this person's an expert. They know what they're talking
Yes.
about. I love these things, the steps. Okay, these are the 5 steps. But the reality of the matter is they got into business to do what they love and enjoy, and they're able to see you as the expert, and they're willing to have you pay to do what you obviously know how to do.
Yes.
Because yes, you told me what to do, but honestly, do I really want to go about doing that? It's like being given a
Roger, and
recipe for
I
a
love
rest.
that. I love that
Okay.
because that's exactly what I would say is I was like, quite frankly, though, you can tell people all the things,
Mhm.
99% ain't gonna do it,
That's right.
okay? They ain't
But
gonna do it. They
yeah,
ain't
but
gonna do it.
you can give me the
So,
recipe book on how to make a meal, but at the end of the day, I want you to make me the meal and serve
I
it
want
to
you to
me.
do it. I want you to do it, not me. You know what I mean? And so I agree with you. Like, I really do not get stressed about, like, I will talk
That's right.
about certain things that, we do and like something that someone, like, again, people ask me all the time, how do I research shows? I will happily talk about the way that we research and the ways that we look into stuff because, again, 99% of these people are not going to do it, right? They are going to say, you know what? Can you just do it? You
That's
know what
right.
I mean? And so I think that that's such an important asterisk that you put out there and point that you put out there is most people are not going to do it even if you give them all the tools, but you are able to show why you are an expert in what it is that you do.
That's right. Don't be afraid to actually give your expertise because at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to be willing to do it themselves. They're going to
100%.
pay you for it. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Now, the other thing that you brought up is the evergreen nature of the work. It's the fact
Yes.
that you're on a show. Yes, it aired today, but it's going to be out there forever. And more importantly, from a marketing perspective, you're able to now put that in communications, an email, for example, a marketing
Yes.
campaign that says, I was a guest on a show.
Mhm.
Here's something we talked about. And it's a way of endearing yourself to your potential customers because they
Mhm.
get a chance to actually now spend not just a few minutes reading an email, they get a chance to actually go hear an episode where for 30,
Mhm.
60 minutes, you've gone into a lot of things that you do. They're being educated. You're positioning yourself as the authority. They're becoming acquainted with you, and they're more inclined to say, you know what, this is the person I want to
This
meet
is
with.
it.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. The beauty of podcasts is how much content that you can be creating off of one podcast interview. Okay. And I love what you just said about putting it in your own e-newsletter. That's absolutely a part of it. I highly recommend our clients put them in their nurture sequences, like
Yes.
after a sales call.
Yeah.
Hey, love chatting with you. If you want to hear a little bit more from me, maybe if it's just in a PS, even, right? It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but it's like,
Yeah.
PS, I just actually talked about your question that you had on a recent episode that I was on. Feel free to listen in and get my answer, more in depth there, etc. All kinds of cool things that you can be doing. But you should, and I will tell everyone that's listening, this is a tip. This is a hot tip from Christina to the audience. Turn every blog or every interview you do into a blog post and backlink to the host. Okay. This is a really, really great SEO strategy, and a lot of people sleep on it. Okay. So, and by the way, you can use ChatGPT. I'm not going to tell. Okay. You can use AI to help create a blog post from it, right? Etc. Put it out there, backlink to the host, backlink to those things. But that is such a great way. And then you can be putting that in your e-newsletter too, right? Like every month when you send out an e-newsletter, hey, I was a guest on 3 shows this month. You can see the blog posts here where we recap them. You can get a link to the show itself, etc. But I think that that's a really, really great thing. And if you've already been on shows, still do that. Okay. Take the shows that you already on and create blog posts. I don't care if it was 6 months ago. I don't care if it was 3 months ago. It's all good. You can still be creating that content from that. The same thing is with creating social media posts. I can't even tell you, you can easily be creating 5, 10 social media snippets from each podcast interview that you do. And I think what's really interesting about this is you can put some out right when the show airs, but just like we talked about, schedule another one to go out 6 months from now. Schedule another one for 9 months from now. That's the beauty of all these social media things. You can schedule things a year out. So you can literally be putting these clips, as long as there's stuff that you're still going to believe 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, you can be scheduling that stuff now. Just make sure you're tagging the host. They're going to be super excited to see you, putting their content out there even more 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road. But we have had clients that they have gotten new clients because they reposted something 6 months later, 9 months later, etc. They didn't just focus it around right when the episode came out.
That's right. You can repurpose this indefinitely. It's evergreen.
Yes.
So I love that. Now, there's 2 more things that I want to kind of dive into as it relates to being a guest. One is clearly you got to have something compelling to discuss or talk about. And oftentimes the host, they're at a limited basis. Well, let me say it this way. As a host, we're always curious with our guests what it is they're an expert in, and we want to actually highlight that. We're trying to, as a host, put them, the guest, on the pedestal, and we
Absolutely.
need your help as a guest to help do that, simply because of the fact that we want to actually highlight what you're an expert in. So what generally happens is when you're reaching out to suggest, I would like to be a guest on your show, here's what I feel I can offer to your audience. They're looking for, tell me what it is that you uniquely you can actually share on the show. That's usually a 1 sheet. And in that 1 sheet, you're highlighting some of your expertise, maybe providing some questions that the host could ask you that you can then go deep on. Tell us about that process of how do you now, as a guest, get on shows, just in a very short way.
Yeah. We do 1 sheets for our clients, but I truly believe that the magic is in your email pitch, right? So the pitch email that you are sending to the host of the show, the producer of the show, etc. And we come with topics. So just like you're talking about, we are putting in 3 or 4 topic ideas that we think make sense for their audience. Okay. Now, to be clear, you don't need to be switching up these topics every time you pitch. Okay.
No.
You are actually going to be talking about the same stuff on most shows that you go on. Okay. So I don't want you to get hung up. I think people have this idea of like, this is a 1920s newsroom and they need to like have a scoop, each time they're like sending something to a host. And I'm like, no. You are actually, the point of this work is for you to be kind of getting the same message out there to different audiences, but over and over and over again. So you are absolutely going to come up with some topics that make sense. And what I really want you to do is think about who your ideal client is. Okay. And so, you may have a finance, bookkeeping, accounting firm, whatever it is that you do, but you got to have some favorite clients, right? You got to have some particular niches, some particular verticals that you're like, I really love working with X, right? And maybe there's a couple. You could have a couple there that you're thinking of. One of our clients who's seen huge ROI with us, she was actually, before she became a bookkeeper in corporate and then started her own multi-million-dollar agency, She was a hairdresser. And she loves to go and talk on shows to hairdressers, to beauty professionals, to med spas, to people that are in that world. That doesn't mean that's the only audiences she talks to, but that means that that is a really big focus for her. And so her topics are, some of the topics that we have for her are very niche towards that, right? Like they are
Sure.
like, what are the top tax mistakes that hairdressers are making, right? Getting really specific and knowing that that is the audience that for this particular show, right? And she kills it because she goes on these shows, she talks about what they specifically they see issues on, and people are like, "Oh, she actually gets me." She's not just here to talk about tax keeping. Do you like how I just combined all the words into one? I'm not here to talk about tax in general. She's not here to talk about tax in general. She's here to specifically talk about what they see happen over and over again with people in the same industry that I am in, right? And that is huge. And she will actually come to us and she'll be like, okay, you got us on the show. We got like 3 or 4 new clients, like photographers. That's an example that we had happen. She's like, you got us on a couple photography shows. We had multiple clients come in and they all had this same issue. And so then she says to me, can we create a new topic around this issue? Absolutely. Because then when we pitch her to more photography shows, she's going to be able to be really, really specific on that thing. Right. So whatever these things are, whatever these niches are, the more specific you can get with what you're seeing is going to have a huge impact when you go to pitch. Because again, the listeners are going to be like, this person understands me.
Well, one of the things that I think is powerful about that is it's then viral. People want to share this. Wow, you've got to hear this.
Yep.
This is something that somebody addressed that wasn't just generic, it's specific. You've got to know this. And so all of a sudden people start sharing it naturally. The other thing that I want to bring up though is in doing these shows, being a guest, it's very important to also have some type of an offer, some way of actually connecting with the audience and having them now engage with you directly so that you can actually get them on your list so that they could
Yes.
actually be following or connected with you so that they're no longer the audience of the show. They're now
Mhm.
a follower of you. What are some great tips that you would have as to, as a guest on a show, having something that allows the listener who's exercising, who's working in the
Mhm.
garden, who's driving a car, who
Yeah.
can't really stop and do something, but yet can actually now take what you're sharing and somehow now connect with you?
Connect with you in that way. Absolutely. And one thing is always make sure when you're on a show that they also put whatever your link is in the show notes.
Hmm.
The reason that I say that is that's where a lot of people are going to click on it. Even if they're listening to it and, at that moment and they want to click, that's what they're going to click to is right there in the show notes also. But what we really recommend for clients, particularly when they're starting out in this work, is to have one call to action page. Okay. And it's just a landing page on your website. You don't need to be creating, something new and crazy and, fancy or anything like that. But like for us, it would be like we have publicity by Christina /booked. Okay. So you could have whatever your company is /podcast /gift, right? Whatever that thing is. And on that page, I highly recommend you have some kind of free thing that people can get a hold of, right? So maybe some kind of checklist, some kind of free download. If you have your own podcast, you can even put a couple of your favorite episodes that you think it would be great for people to listen in on, or popular ones that you have. I also like to make sure that people include their social media channels on that page, right? If someone wants to come follow you on LinkedIn, come follow you on Instagram, wherever it is that you're active, that's a really great thing to have on that page too. But what I really, really want you to have on that page is a way for them to book a discovery call, to apply to work with you. There are a lot of people that they're going to hear you and then they're going to want to figure out how they can work with you. Okay. A lot of people make a mistake of only putting people in a nurture sequence, giving them a freebie and putting them in a nurture sequence and not really giving them a quick opportunity to just connect with them right away. And I actually see that happening more and more with our clients where people are hearing them on a show and then they're like, no, I don't want this. I just want to connect with you like right now and see if we can start working together or what that might look like. And so I want you to have a way that they can book a discovery call, apply, whatever it is that makes sense, and track it. Ask on that thing, how did you hear about us, right? How did you hear about our agency? And see, that's how, again, our clients, that's how they track if this is working, because they'll have one of those options be, I heard you on a podcast.
That's wonderful. Yeah, one of the things that you want to do is basically have a way for them to call you. You want to have your phone number,
Yes.
maybe schedule an appointment, have your
Yes.
calendar, but then offer something for free for which you
Mhm.
can actually, in exchange, capture their contact
Their email,
information.
their contact.
That's right.
Exactly.
Those
Yep.
3 things I think are the inevitables. Now, the 4th one that you could add is perhaps providing your social channels that people can
That's
say,
what
"Oh,
I
I
like
want
to
to follow
do.
you on." Yes.
Yes, I definitely think it's a good idea to have your social channels on there because some people, like, let's be honest, some people are burned by joining people's email lists. Like they are done. Like
Yeah.
they're like, I will join another email list the day I die. You know what I mean? Like they are like done with it. Now, of course, hopefully that's not, we're getting them to be so excited to hear from us that they want to join our email list. But there are some people that are going to be like, I'm gonna go follow them on LinkedIn. I'm gonna go follow them on Instagram. I want to see what they're like. I want to do a little bit more research. I want to get a little bit more information on them before I make my next step. And so I like to have that option there, but ideally we're having one of the other two things happen where they're joining the email list and or they're booking a call or to your point just have a way to contact us immediately.
Very good. No, that's awesome. Next question regarding the listening to podcasts. I'm just curious, where do you listen to your podcasts? What are you
Like
doing?
like what platform?
No, no, no. What are
Oh,
you doing? Are you driving? Are you
I'm
running?
a
Are
lot
you
of times I'm driving.
okay?
I am walking. Like I said, I walk my dog each morning. And so I'm listening to a podcast when I do that. And then the other thing, this annoys my husband to no end, but I also listen to podcasts when I do the dishes or sometimes when I'm cooking dinner. Also, I'll just be like, y'all don't exist and put my AirPods in and do whatever it is that I'm doing. But I'll like see him come up to me. People have probably experienced this and he'll be like I could see his mouth like moving and I'll be like, what? And then I'd like take, take one out. And he's like, I've only been yelling for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, well, this is my podcast time.
This is my
But that
thing.
is when I'm listening to stuff. And to be frank, I'm not always listening to business podcasts. Sometimes I'm listening to true crime, to comedy, right? Like my husband listens to a lot of sports podcasts, right? Like we all have our different things that we like to listen to. But yeah, those are my main times other than for work when I'm listening to podcasts.
Because you're working.
Yeah, I'm working. Yes, exactly. I should write off all that time.
That's very
Exactly.
good, very good. All right. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap a few things up here simply because of the time, but I do want to thank you for all these little insights. One of the things for my listeners I'd like you to take advantage of is in the episode descriptions, we're actually sharing here something that you need to do. It's actually understanding your publicity. It's a quiz that Christina is offering. I would encourage you to go take this quiz, find out exactly what it is you can be doing to leverage your publicity a little bit more, and in fact, perhaps leverage podcasting as part of
Mhm.
it. So definitely take a few minutes and go do the quiz. It is in the episode description that you can take advantage of that. The other thing I'd like to do is real quickly just summarize a few things. One happens to be that of our conversation related to marketing and podcasting, how it has become a very key part of the marketing model that you should be considering. What you should be doing to market your business should perhaps include the podcasting experience, where you are as a guest going on shows and actually sharing your expertise, the knowledge, the know-how of what it is you do, and as such positioning yourself as an authority. And through that, there's a byproduct that I thought was very important that we were mentioning, and it's that fact that they actually get to know you a little bit more
Mhm.
intimately, if you will, so that they're more comfortable to now work with you at a professional level. It's that know, like, and trust that we spoke of at the beginning. The other thing that I thought was very powerful is the fact that when we were talking about the podcast, we talked about the evergreen nature of them. The fact that once it's happened, we're able to repurpose it. We can put it into our nurture cycle, put it as part of our email campaigns. But Christina also did a great job of explaining that we can now take the episode and now do a blog and do some social posts around it and actually repurpose those again and again and again as we're actually doing this. Now, one of the things that I also want to encourage as it relates to the podcast is that call to action feature that we spoke of at the end. Clearly, once you're done with the show itself, you need to have some way of connecting with that audience, something that you can offer them so as to now pull them off of that audience list of that podcast and bring them into your sphere of influence. And that's where we're actually talking about that landing page where, of course, you're offering your phone number, your calendar, but it's perhaps something that you're offering for free that in exchange for that, you're going to be getting their contact information. All these are valuable tips, things that you can be doing as it relates to podcasting, becoming a guest on shows so as to position yourself as, in fact, that authority and educating your potential customers as to the services that you can offer. This is an excellent episode. I really like some of the highlights of what we were able to discuss. And Christina, you were very, very helpful with this. So I do want to ask, what final thought might you have?
My final thought that I have for your listeners is you can do this. I know that there are a lot of people listening in right now that are like, haha, no. You know, like they're like, I would never go out on a podcast. That's too nerve-wracking. It's just too much, right? Etc. And I am here to tell you that you absolutely can do this. And one thing that Roger said that really stood out with me that I think you should think about is how a host is trying to put the best show on they possibly can. And what I mean by that is they're not out to get you. Okay. If something goes wrong, if you say something wrong, 99% of the time, now this one is, but 99% of the time, shows are not live. Okay. And what I mean by that is you have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm sorry, I really messed that up. Can can you ask me that question again? And can I redo it? And so there's a lot of opportunity there. And the first couple, you're going to sweat your way through, you're going to stumble your way through. We all do, right? But then you're going to get more comfortable. And I truly, truly believe that the worst thing that can happen is you do not put yourself out there. If you are not doing this marketing work, and not even necessarily podcasts, but any kind of publicity work to get yourself out there, your business will not grow. If new people are not hearing about us regularly, then our business isn't growing. And so I think that it is something that every single person that's listening can do. And by the way, my introverts, I am not an introvert. I'm a stone cold extrovert, but most of my clients are introverts. And so the reason that this works so well for them, and again, I want to reassure those of y'all out there, is because they are just having a one-on-one conversation. It is just me and Roger right now. There's no one else. There's not a big audience of people. There's not anything like that. And a lot of people really thrive in that environment and can have a real conversation with one person, right? That's actually their ideal situation. So that's all I would say is you got this, you can do it. It's just a matter of getting started.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to add one more thing, and it's something that we brought up within our
Yeah.
conversation. And it's the fact that the financial services, bookkeeping, accounting, tax, they actually do value these types of platforms simply because of the fact that the listener gets to know, like, and trust the person that they're going to perhaps be the most vulnerable with, talking
Hmm.
about their financial situation, the monies, whether it be business or personal. And that podcast could have actually broken down that one barrier that existed with all the other accounting
Yes.
professionals, but no longer exists for you because they got to know you a little bit differently,
Hmm.
having heard you on a podcast. So that was one highlight that I definitely didn't want to overlook. So thank you for that one. Here's what I'd like to do as I wrap this up is definitely, as listeners, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to have you as a subscription. What you would do is actually subscribe, follow, and in doing so, you're going to be notified each and every week when we release a new episode so that you can actually hear from the experts, the various things that you need to be doing to work on your business. With that in mind, I also want to invite you to go to universalaccounting.com, and there in the podcast section found in the navigation, you'll see that we actually have highlights. These are podcasts that we've actually drawn from now over 5 years of producing these, basically the good shows that you can now play and listen to as it relates to marketing, selling, pricing, onboarding clients, tech stacks, training staff, mental health. These are all things that you can go binge listen to as playlists and go deep with the experts as it relates to your specific
Love that.
needs here and today. So definitely take advantage of those playlists. The other thing I would like to do is invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference where we actually get together with the owners of accounting, bookkeeping, and tax businesses and bring on the stage the experts, those individuals that have the timely information that we need to be considering as we're running our business. You get to hear from the experts, meet your peers, build new friendships, and with those friendships, even perhaps have collaborations where you're better able to serve your clients. And of course, meet the team here at Universal Accounting Center that's committed to helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal. So definitely register now, and I look forward to meeting you at GrowCon. It's an event you do not want to miss. As it relates to your services, if you're interested in actually taking advantage of the various services that Universal Accounting happens to offer, as the sponsor of this show, we have a variety of programs, courses, curriculum to actually help you as the owner, as well as your staff, get the training you need to offer quality, competent services as it relates to accounting, bookkeeping, and tax. So definitely make sure that you're offering those quality services as certified professional bookkeepers, professional tax preparers, and profit and growth experts. Lastly, I'd like to actually say that if you have any questions regarding this topic or any others, feel free to reach out to us. You can go to universalaccountingschool.com or call us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and have a great day and be safe out there. Christina, that was awesome.
Yay. Thank you. I loved that conversation. This is such a great strategy for people in your world. And so I'm really excited to kind of hopefully wrap their minds around that a little bit.
Oh, I love it. Having you having you here as a guest has been wonderful, simply because of the fact that I agree it is a timely thing that everyone needs to be considering for their business. So, yeah, I'm a proponent just like you for your services. So, well done.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. And I was going to ask you about your event you have coming up. When is that?
it is in May.
It is in May. Okay. Are you looking for speakers?
We already have those, but clearly
Okay.
you could consider actually doing one for 2026.
Yeah, I would love that. Let
That
me
would be
just make a
awesome.
note here. Because we could really get into kind of the how and case studies and stuff like that on that, which I think could be really cool for your audience.
I would definitely agree. That is something that I think would be very relevant, and I'm confident that they would find that interesting. So that'd be good. Here's what I want to do before we wrap up. I'd like you to
Yes.
record for me that promo piece that I put in the
Yes.
chat.
Let me open that up here. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm ready. Just let me know.
Do it.
Okay. Hey everyone, this is Christina Lenkowski. It was so fun to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discussed why podcast guesting is such an effective marketing tool for those in the finance, bookkeeping, accounting, tax world, and I really invite you to listen in and join us.
Perfect. I love it. All right. So let me just tell you what's happened. This has obviously gone